This week, the Alliance roster gets a shake-up in Greater Trash Coalition. In Pureblind, Brave Collective faces determined resistance. A Ragnarok is implicated in a drive-by shooting in Vale of the Silent. A date mix-up leads to a stolen Fraternity Keepstar. Incursion runners get dropped on in-period basis. And RERMPI continue to slug it out with fire in Tenerifis, Immensea and Feythabolis. Hello pod people, I'm Frost and this is your weekly EVE Online update. Welcome back. So it's been a busy week again in New Eden, specifically in the northwest and the southeast. So that's the same as last week. But before we do that, as always, I have to announce my scope syndication winners. And the skin is currently the Vedmak. Now, I've actually got 3 winners. So once again, I've got to shuffle over a little bit to the side. So from the 5th of October, Lodian Sempi came through. So congratulations to Lodian. And then from the 12th of October, we have Brooklyn and Nova Valentis, who have also both won some Vedmak skins. So congratulations to all 3 of those winners. I have 2 more scope syndication skins to give away a little bit later on. But before I do that, I've got to mention 2 favorite comments of mine that were made in the entry to the prize draw. The first one is from Mr. Salubrious with Frank Sinatra is my favorite singer. And one from Lars Peter Kjær Christensen, which is Kikimora is the new black. So I like both of those comments so much. If you remember from September, I had a few Tempest skins left over. So Mr. Salubrious and Lars, get in touch with me on my Discord and I'll give out to each of you a Tempest scope syndication skin for those wonderful comments. Okay, so let's get on with the news. So as always, you know how it works. I jump up into my box. I have the New Eden map in front of me, courtesy of Wallari through Dotland, or Dotland through Wallari. And I'm going to grab my usual pen and try not to mess up my doodles too much. Let me see if I can find my mouse. My mouse is stuck. There we go. All right, so the areas we're going to be starting on first is we're going to be talking about Greater Trash Coalition. So Greater Trash Coalition live in these 3 areas. So they have the whole of Declan, the whole of Fade, and some of Pureblind. You could also say, I know Triumvirate are kind of involved with Greater Trash Coalition, but I don't know if they're actually part of Greater Trash Coalition itself. In fact, I have a list here of the alliances, if I can just find the right thing. Here we go. So as far as I understand, at the moment, Greater Trash Coalition is made up of We Form Volta, We Form Blob, 7 Sins, Toilet Paper, Quote Alliance, which I forgot last week, I wasn't sure about. I was corrected on that. So Quote Alliance and Scumlords and Out of the Blue. Now, we had another alliance that was part of Greater Trash Coalition, which was Federation of Respect, Honor, Passion Alliance. The name is almost as long as Hidden Leaf Village and Ninja Assassin's Squad Esports by one word. So anyway, we'll just call them RHP, so .RHP. So .RHP got kicked out from Greater Trash Coalition in the last week. As I understanding, it was an issue over standings that they made some enemies blue. There was then potentially as well some SOV warfare involved with people within the own coalition. And these are all the things that kicked it off that led to essentially .RHP being kicked out. Now, if we go into Declan, which is right here, you can see this area here, which I'm going to highlight, was the area that was held by RHP or .RHP. And as you can see, Volta have already started taking a bunch of the systems. Let me see if I can get my doodles right. There we go. So Volta have already taken these, and you can see some more have been reinforced. And I would imagine it'd be about another week or so, and then all of these will have flipped over to Reform Volta. Now, there is one issue that still remains, which is that .RHP have a Keepstar in E3UY-6. Now, understandably, WeForm Volta are a little bit concerned about that. It has not been handed over to WeForm Volta as they were kicked. So as a consequence of that, WeForm Volta have actually anchored a Fortizar on grid with the Keepstar, just in case, I would imagine, if it was to change hands suddenly to an enemy, aka Fraternity, that would cause a lot of problems. So unless this Keepstar gets sold or handed over, I can see this being on the hit list for Greater Trash Coalition, hence why the Fortizar was there. Now, there was a fight. I believe this fight was over the Fortizar. I mean, I can see it's on grid here, as you can see right there. The main thing with this battle report, though, is to show that whilst RHP made up the biggest of the numbers, they had help from Northern Coalition and from Red Menace Coalition, or specifically Red Alliance, and What Could Possibly Go Wrong brought a few members as well, so you can see they're right there. And then Pandemic Horde showed up as well, so you had a bit of PanFam coming in to assist on that. It obviously didn't work out at all well for .RHP. Most of the losses were from .RHP and from Red Menace Coalition. You can actually see, if you go down here, there's a whole bunch of hurricanes that died. And then right at the top, I think we had some command ships, which were Astartes, which were up there as well. And obviously, we had a Revelation as well that certainly boosted the kill board there at almost 9 billion. So that's what's going on with basically with .RHP. So .RHP are on the move. They have been evacuating Declan. My understanding is they've been set still. They are set blue to Fraternity. I'm not quite sure where they're going yet, whether they're going to end up with Fraternity or they're just going to move out and find a safe passage through Fraternity space into LowSec and then regroup there. Who knows? But that will be something to keep an eye on. So there you go. So that's kind of what's going on in part to Greater Trash Coalition. Now there is another piece of news, which is, here we go. Let me go over to, I'm going to close that, into Pure Blind. So in Pure Blind, we have over on the left here, Hysteria. Now Hysteria isn't really there anymore. It's now Out of the Blue. Out of the Blue have the ticker of Vapor. And in fact, if I actually switch over to my TCU ownership, you'll see, there we go. So now it's all showing as Vapor. So Vapor, aka Out of the Blue, are making the announcement that they are actually leaving Greater Trash Coalition. Now they're actually going to be merging with two groups. I did make a note of it, but I can't see where I put my notes. If I remember rightly, the groups are United Mining. No, sorry. Let me just, give me a cut. Let me find my notes. There we go. How could I possibly forget this name? So Out of the Blue are merging with the corporation My Little Pony Industries Incorporated, or Inc. and the alliance Out of Sight. Now, My Little Pony Industries Incorporated and Out of Sight are primarily Russian-speaking alliances, and they're going to be merging in with Out of the Blue. I do say merger, but the name is going to stay Out of the Blue. Apparently, the Russian alliances and the Russian groups were thinking of using that name in Russian, and so they then discovered that Out of the Blue had it in English, and so the name is going to be kept. Now, there are some other groups that are going to be joining this new kind of reformed Out of the Blue, but it hasn't been confirmed yet, so I'm going to wait until this has actually been officially announced, and then I will probably announce that on next week's show. Now, if you remember as well, let me just jump back to iHubs on here before I forget, otherwise I'll get myself really confused. If we go back to our universe map, if you remember that down in Esoteria, AOM, or Army of Manga, are under attack from Fraternity who've deployed there and from Stain Roos, and basically Out of the Blue are acting as mercenaries, paid mercenaries by AOM to support them in their fight against those two groups. And as my understanding is that Out of the Blue will then become a mercenary alliance, and that will be their kind of main purpose and their reason for being. So there you go. So that's kind of what's going on with Out of the Blue. So definitely a great shake-up there in Greater Trash Coalition. Right, so let's get back to Pure Blind, because we're still up in the Northwest. Let me go back to my universe map again, go back to Pure Blind. So we talked about Out of the Blue and what's going on there. We talked about Quote Alliance and the fact that they are part of Greater Trash Coalition. I got that wrong last week, so my apologies for that. All right, so let's get on with the other piece of news, and that is Brave Collective moving into Pure Blind. So obviously that was the big news last week, and there we go. So Brave have managed to secure themselves a couple of more systems in Pure Blind. So I think they had Q-5211, and I think it was M-Y or CR-. They've managed to get two more. You can see they've also reinforced two more iHubs belonging to Flying Dangerous here, and then obviously that would then complete the constellation for them. Whether they expand out that constellation anytime soon, that remains to be seen. But the main thing is, and this is where the title of the video comes in, resistance is not futile. They've been meeting a lot of resistance, primarily from Bandalogs. Now, Bandalogs .ru, so the group here. And they've been living in Pureblind for a very, very long time, a Russian-speaking alliance. And they've been contracted a few times they've lost their territory, and then they basically pull back into NPC space and then pop back out again. Obviously you've got NPC space over here as well. But a lot of fights have been taking place around this system, which is 5ZXX-K, because there was a Brave Fortizar there. That was the first Fortizar that Brave put down. And then obviously there is a Bandalogs Fortizar there as well, Bandalogs being, like I said, .ru. So first of all, at the beginning of the week, so just literally around the time I was recording this last week, the Brave Fortizar was put into armor timer, and we saw the standard kind of null-sec defense being put up by a big alliance, which is carriers and skynetting. So that means basically you tether your carriers onto the Fortizar, and then when you're ready to engage, you just untether, launch all your fighters. If you get into trouble, you can just tether up again and you can dock. Also, being an armor timer, you know that your structure is not going to be destroyed, and even if you do fail the timer, you can still dock all of your carriers. So that timer came out, and it wasn't actually contested. There then was a retaliation, and there was an attack on the Fortizar that belonged to Bandalogs. And let me see if I can find the battle report. Here we go. And is this the right one? No, I am not on the case today. Let me see if I can just go back on this one. No, all right, let me cut and let me bring up the right kill board. Right, I had it all along. It was just on a slightly different order on my tabs, which is why I got myself so confused. Right, so the reason why I have this page up, this is the Zkill page for the system of 5ZX-K. And I wanted to show you primarily the total number of kills that have happened in the last week. So the 1,581 kills. So this system has been super active, not only between the fights between Bandalogs and Brave, but also all the kind of third parties that are joining in. As I mentioned last week, that there are NPC stations there. And so therefore, it's very easy for third parties to kind of get involved in these fights as and when they occur. To kind of give it a perspective, if you look at Abazon is the low-sec system between Jita and Amar, which is gate camping central, which is normally gate camped by dock workers and White Sky and a bunch of others. You can see the total kills there was 2,000 for the week. So compared to like a really high traffic system, 5ZXX-K, came pretty close at 1,500. So the fight was here. So there we go. So essentially this was Bandalogs, Flying Dangerous, and some of the other groups I mentioned last week. So Picatron, Silent Company as well, I think we mentioned the other week. They all came along and they fought with Bandalogs to protect this Fortizar in 5ZXX-K. Now, you can see that the fight was pretty even, although there was slightly more losses to Brave. And Brave did bring out some carriers, but not many, which was, pretty brave on their part. That's not the easiest thing to do when you've got just a few carriers. But they took it in and they took the fight, and but the Fortizar was able to be saved by Bandalogs. Now, Bandalogs brought Nightmares. Brave Collective brought Feroxes. Feroxes are never going to win against Nightmares. They did manage to kill 2 or 3, but as you can see, most of the Ferox fleet was absolutely annihilated. Just simply because the Nightmares just do so much damage and have a low SIG. In fact, their SIG is almost as low as the Ferox with their afterburners on and with the Ferox with their prop mods off. So that gives you an idea that the Feroxes are just actually much bigger the targets than the Nightmares. So there you go. So that's the fight happened, and that was 5ZX. Then the other system that we need to jump to quickly is in Q-5211. So here we have Brave have actually dropped a Fortizar right in the middle of a bunch of Flying Dangerous structures. They've been hitting those structures, and once again we had a fight over a Fortizar, this time over a Flying Dangerous Fortizar. And this time, not so much bigger numbers, but the important thing here is the fact that the Flying Dangerous Fortizar still lives. So whilst there's been this tit for tat between both groups, that's between Brave and Bandalogs and Friends, they haven't actually succeeded in destroying each other's Fortizars yet, and the Fortizars are kind of the main staging systems for these two alliances at this time. So interesting to see how that's going to play out, and I would imagine Brave are going to continue to manage to kind of make progress into pure blind, but they're going to have to fight it every single step of the way. And whether they actually manage to remove the Bandalogs alliances and the flying danger structures at this stage, unless they start putting in capitals in big numbers, that remains to be seen. So there you go. So that kind of brings us up to speed on pure blind. Then I wanted to go over to Tribute quickly. So what I wanted to mention in Tribute is, if you remember, for weeks, Volta had taken a whole bunch of systems. In fact, they'd also taken the ones in blue. And I'm going to make a rude doodle there because I saw it happen before I did it. So I'm going to redo that. So these were all the systems that Volta managed to take. And then after that, NSH managed to retake a couple. You can see where I was going with this, right? And now NSH have managed to retake all of these. So I assume this is because Nalsec and Shalupan were actually deployed in the south and they were fighting dock workers, and then they pulled away from that, I think a week or two ago. So they clearly moved their way home and have decided, right, it's time to get rid of Volta and push Volta out of Tribute and turn it back to Winter Coalition territory, kind of 100%. So that's kind of what's going on there. Although I don't believe NSH are actually part of Winter Coalition. So if anyone's happy to correct me, please do. But I know that they are on very good terms with Winter Coalition. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to Vale of the Silence. So I have it somewhere here. Here we go. So I talked about a drive-by shooting. And what this is that this actually took place in the staging system of Fraternity in Vale of the Silence. So that's in 4-HWWF. And there is a Ragnarok, so Ragnarok the Titan, a Ragnarok piloted, funnily enough, by a Ragnarok. And so a Ragnarok from Pandemic Horde actually jumped in to the system, warped on grid to a golem that was ratting, one-shotted it, and then managed to get out, and basically complete drive-by shooting. And so I think that definitely qualifies as my random death of the week. Not something you see every day, and pretty ballsy as well. And yeah, so good job on that one. I wouldn't say good fight, as it was a one shot, but definitely a good job on that one. And thank you for bringing it to my attention on my Discord as well. It's always nice to see kind of these unusual kills and to be able to report them for you. So then we're talking of unusual stuff happening. Then we go on to Fraternity. So Fraternity had a Keepstar unanchoring in Oasa, which is all the way up in the northeast. And as you know, that's an area they vacated a long time ago, but they still had structures there. And they got their timing wrong on the Keepstar. Now, the pilots that actually took this was actually a single corp, DMSQD, which is a corp of two people, plus help from the Morgue, which is an alliance that came to their help. And essentially, they managed to get this freighter into the system as they saw that it was unanchoring from a scout. But the real story is that they actually took it from HiSec into a wormhole, put it through a wormhole. They then jumped it 9 gates. This is a freighter, don't forget. They jumped this freighter 9 gates into the system and then logged it off. They then logged it in. Fraternity didn't show up. They swooped it, as you saw, and scooped it. And then they managed to find an Athanor where they actually had transfer rights. And so they were able to not have to worry about getting the freighter out again. They simply took the freighter to the Athanor, did a transfer, and then moved the Keepstar into asset safety. So obviously they've got a fee to pay for the asset safety, but hey, free Keepstar. So I'd assume they will sell it, and then they will be able to, there'll be quids in based on the fact that they've only had to pay 10 to 15%, I think 15% of that, and transfer fees for asset safety. So that was a pretty good scoop on their part. So there you go. So that's kind of what happened with that Fraternity Keepstar. Not the first one to be scooped, and probably not the last one to be scooped as well. But well spotted to the pilots that did this, and well done as well for getting that freighter into position through wormholes. That was pretty epic, I have to say. All right, so time to do the giveaway. And once again, I have some Vedmak Scope Syndication skins to give away, 2 skins. You know by now the way that it works is that you have to make up a sentence in the comments below with a keyword that I give you. Now, I was so impressed by that drive-by Ragnarok that I think the keyword this week should be Titan. So make a comment, be as creative as you like. As you see, we've had some pretty good ones in the past, as I mentioned the favorite comments earlier. Make a comment with the word Titan in it, and you'll be entered for the prize draw. The only thing is you have to remember that you have to make this comment by the cutoff time, which is 1800 UTC on Friday, the 22nd of October. So good luck with that. And we will now get back to our usual programming. So I'm going to go back to our map. And this time we're going to talk about Outer Ring. Now in Outer Ring, there is a group that lives there called UMAR. And UMAR stands for United Mining and Hauling Inc. Now if you remember, UMAR had their numbers bolstered when Vega kind of had a bit of a meltdown, and the executor of the alliance kicked a whole bunch of corporations out of Vega over some infighting. Then a number of those alliances had corporations, their members then merged into United Mining and Hauling Inc. And now the big news is they've joined the initiative. So the initiative numbers continue to grow. And obviously it's right next door to Fountain. So it kind of is a good matchup for them, as then they don't have to worry about fighting the initiative. And the initiative, obviously, with an industry group like this, which has got some PvP capabilities as well, it just helps boost their economy and their ability to produce loads and loads of capitals, hopefully for a future war, from the point of view of the initiative and the Imperium as a whole. Right, so that's the piece of news with Outer Ring. So now before we go on to FI.RE versus RERMPI, let's go on to period basis. So in period basis, there was a battle report for an incursion running. So incursion running happened in period basis. Goonswarm were involved with this. And as you can see, they brought a whole bunch of supers to the incursion. And I think it was NC Dot that were on the case here. And I think they found it with a Kikamura fleet that was clearly on a whaling patrol. And then Snuffed Out and Darkside showed up in legions. These are AB super armor tanked legions, one of my favorite doctrines. I used to love flying these. So it's good to see them out and about. So super tanky, and they still did, manage to do some pretty good damage at 40 billion. But I have to say that the supers did get out, but they still did pretty good fighting the defense fleet that showed up to try and protect these incursion runners. Don't forget that incursions, you can't light sinos, so therefore you have to gate anything in if you want to attack incursion runners. So that kind of adds an extra kind of element to that. So that's period basis, right? So now let's go on to RERMPI versus FI.RE. RERMPI being Wrecking Crew, Red Menace Coalition, and PIBC. And the areas of conflict have been Immensea, Tenerifis, Feythabolis, and that's it, yeah. So those are kind of the three areas in which fights are brewing at the moment. So let's start with Tenerifis. So the first thing with Tenerifis is, if you remember last week, I talked about Dreadbomb were moving their capital forces out of their staging Fortizar in T2-V8F, and they were basically jumping their capitals back up to 3L3N-X. Now, I went and took a look in the system, and the Dreadbomb Fortizar is now unanchoring. It's been unanchoring for a week now, so I think I checked about a day or two after my last show. So that should be due to unanchor anytime soon, unless they keep resetting the timer and they're kind of putting it on a kind of false flag there that they're saying they're unanchoring, but they have no plans to, and they're just kind of resetting the timer on that to give an indication that they are potentially withdrawn, but they're not, and there's actually a secret plan. But who knows? We'll find out. But in the meantime, there was a fight in JI1-SY. I believe it was over the iHub reinforced timer for T2-V8F. From the point of view of FI Coalition, they really do want to flip that iHub. That would really work in their favor. And the fight, if I can find it, because I've not been doing too well so far. Oh, there you go, first go, good. So this fight took place in US time zone. Being US time zone, Severance form normally quite a big part of that. Although Legion of Death showed up good numbers for that, but Severance and the Celestial Empire are definitely the strongest of the kind of alliances in that time zone. They then got the help of Test Alliance, which you can see there in blue, and they took some heavy losses, as you could see, at 21 billion. and I don't think they were able to secure the objective. I think they were kind of held off on the gate. I assume that's kind of where it took place. I didn't have all the info on this. This came in rather late for me to get all the info on it. But anyway, so that's what's happening in Tenerifis. Whilst in Immensea, all of the fighting is still going on kind of in the north. Now, before we kind of come on to the fight, the thing I have to point out as well is already replaced are still continuing to expand into Immensea. It looks like also that all the iHubs that belong to deep water hooligans that were here, I think it was 3 or 4 of them, they've now all been flipped, and so they've now been pushed out of there. But the main kind of content is coming from the system of I-NGI8. Now, there are some Dreadbomb Fortizars there, and fighting is happening there all the time. There was a Fortizar armor timer that was fought over, and the battle report there was that Fire Coalition, with the help of Pandemic Horde and Test Alliance, were able to push it into final timer with 2 minutes left to go. So it is in hull timer, but they took losses doing that, and I think they were pushed down. They were eventually pushed down to just 2 fleets, trying to keep this timer going, to keep the damage going, so they could eventually push it into the hull timer, which they have done. So that will now go into its final timer. So that's it for Immensea. And then in Feythabolis, the same thing is kind of happening there. The Fire Coalition are focusing their efforts on hitting structures, primarily Fortizars, trying to affect the staging capabilities of the enemy. So this time round is HYPL-V was put into its hull timer. It was put into its hull timer uncontested. My understanding is that RERMPI or PIBC specifically didn't show up as they had another timer just earlier, so they may not have been able to reform for this timer. The armor timer is coming out at the very time that I'm shooting this show, so that's on Monday the 18th at around 17:30 UTC. So I don't know if it will have come out, will it have died or will have survived. We will have to find that out. You'll have to check yourself on the kill board and see if Fortizar from HYPL-V has shown up. And if you're watching this on the premiere, I will let you know what the situation is with that. Okay, so I think that's about it. In fact, if I do the edit a little bit late, I'll be able to tell you in the edit whether the Fortizar died or not. So there you go. Then just finishing off, as always, I always mention kind of Rorqual kills and Ratting kills. So last week, the Rorqual kills were down. They were down to like 15 Rorquals. We're normally seeing about 30 and about 4 or 5 supers. This week is pumped back up again to 25 Rorquals and 6 Ratting supers. But people have said that one of the likely reasons for the drop in the Rorqual count is the umbrellas, super capital umbrellas are getting better established now. People are getting home properly and got all their affairs sorted out, so they're better able to defend, and people are finding counters to the Kikimoras. And Kikimoras still accounting for the majority of these Rorqual kills being used by all sides, whether it's Imperium Initiative or if it's a Test Alliance. All various groups are using Kikimoras, even Fire Coalition's using them as well, I believe, for whaling purposes. So people are working on counters for those very hard to try and stop that ship from being so effective. Right, then I've got a few things to mention just to close off with. Talk about EVE Meet. So I forgot to mention this last week, that Vienna happened. So that was EVE in Vienna. So they had a meet, and so I wanted to bring that to your attention. They had a good time. They were really happy that they managed to get that all organized. EVE Toronto had to have another meet as well. And I've actually found out as well that EVE Toronto are trying to plan an AT viewing party in Toronto, and hopefully that will be organized by next week. Some dates and locations will be planned. I've asked one of the organizers to get in touch with me, so if they do, I will mention it on the show. Then obviously this weekend, 22nd to the 24th of October is EVE Vegas. As you know, Niall and I were planning to be there, but unfortunately the CDC haven't lifted their restrictions for UK travellers, so we can't make it. So good luck to everyone at EVE Vegas. I hope you have a great time, and I wish you all the best for that. But I will be at EVE London, which is happening on the 6th of November. So there you go. So there's something to look out for there. Right, that's all from me for this week. As always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications, and I will see you on the next one. All right, bye.